Hello, this is Miss Andrea, and I have had a lot of trouble getting this live stream started. I just have to do some, a little bit of, I'm trying to find the link so that I can invite people to my live stream. I think that is it. It is a complete and utter struggle bus today. Hmm. Bear with me, please. I know what to do. So I spent all morning setting this up. I thought I had gotten my new computer, which is over here, um, linked to YouTube. Um, and somehow it reverted. And so that's just not working. And so now I'm doing all of that backup work over again, where I invite my email list in, and I don't have my proper thumbnail up or anything. Because my new computer is a gaming computer, and it doesn't want to do live streaming without me setting up the gaming stuff. Like I said, which I thought I did. But clearly I didn't do it right because it went ahead and completely reverted. Okay. So, hello. My name is Miss Andrea, and you are looking at a newly monetized channel. I got monetized yesterday. Um, so yay, I got monetized yesterday. I'm not monetizing this live stream. I have so much to figure out. I just have so stinking much to figure out. I was monetized years and years and years ago on YouTube. And 2 years ago, when things went crazy with the whole Jake Paul incident and they took away monetization from so many brand new YouTubers, I was demonetized. And at that point, I wasn't using YouTube anyway. For other reasons, I had stopped using YouTube. One of them was because I was dealing with a lot of racial taunting and I had a thinner skin. Well, I'm grown up now and I have a thicker skin because if you look, I've been on YouTube since 2007 and I had a much thinner skin 10 years ago. So I stopped using YouTube. And so I lost my monetization. And when the virus thing happened, I messed around with some websites because I was bored. And after playing around for a while, I decided to come back to YouTube. And I said, you know what, I'm going to get remonetized. It'll take 3 months. 10. It took 10 months. And so here I am. But I have a mission. Back when I was on YouTube before, I was just talking about homeschooling, the ins and outs, day to day of homeschooling, what we were doing, how my kids all finished homeschooling in 2013. Oh, I hate this. My connection went out for a minute. At this point, my youngest finished homeschooling in 2013, and what is it, 21? She went to college. The older child went to college. He got a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. She went to college. She's been back home with me for 3 years. She's leaving next. She's actually been working with me, helping me run my homeschool program, and she's leaving this summer for fellowship. She's an actress and a costumer, and she has a costume fellowship. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about issues with U.S. schools and how parents can help their kids excel. I've got my handy dandy notebook so that I don't forget anything. If you have questions, please put them in comments. They can be questions about homeschooling in general. They can be questions about getting into college with scholarships. A third of my time I actually spend in helping traditionally schooled kids, public school kids, private school kids. I do not discriminate. If you need help getting your college applications done, if you need help putting your best foot forward to get into college, I'm your girl. This is what I do. I run a homeschool program, but it's a not-for-profit. I don't do this for the money, trust me. And my goal is to make sure that anyone who wants to get into college can get into college. You got to work for it, but it's possible. So let's start here. I read an article this week, and it was entitled, a really long title. This researcher asked kids what's wrong with U.S. schools. So there was this researcher, she looked at the numbers. She compared U.S. schools to schools all over the world. And she saw that American schools are just not competing academically with non-U.S. schools at all. The charts are horrendous. The graphics are scary. And there will be a link so that you can look at the maps yourself. The state I live in, our education system might meet what the Russian kids are getting. And they're a depressed oligarchy. Like there's just nothing good about what's going on. Basically, America just does really bad when it comes to being measured against other countries academically. So she didn't just like go around and ask children, what do you think about school? She looked at international students, and she asked them, she asked foreign exchange students, American students who had gone to school in America and were now going to school overseas. So these were the kids she asked about what they thought about American schools and what the differences were. And here's what they had to say. Basically, they felt that foreign schools are harder than American schools. They were just like, we got here and we got punched in the face with academics. It's just so much more mentally challenging to do school outside of the US than it is to do school inside of the US. And that it's not about homework and it's not about busy work. On the contrary, it's not that at all. It's about just more complicated information they're being expected to learn. They don't give a lot of homework, but they push the students mentally. They don't have the problem with the low expectation culture that we have here. Here's important information. This is what you need to know to get to the next step. You're going to be tested on this at some point because, they do tests to get into university and all that. And so here's the information. How can I help you learn it? Learn it, And so that's the first thing. The foreign exchange students felt that The academics in foreign schools were just more mentally challenging. That's number one. Number two, no one's going to want to hear this. No one wants to hear what I have to say next. The second thing that foreign exchange students from the US to other countries found about foreign schools. They don't take sports seriously over there. Not professional sports. They don't take sports for children. They don't take high school sports seriously over there at all. Sports are a hobby and nothing more. Look at my visitors go down as I talk about how sports are not important over there. So in the United States, sports are a huge distraction. I didn't say this. Our foreign exchange students said this. Sports are a huge distraction. In other countries, academics come first. So basically, we get harder work and we are not distracted by the school athletes and who won the game. They don't care. You're at school to get school. You're not in school to play whatever sports are that they play over there. And so this gives me a question. And the question is, why do we here in the US put so much time and money into athletic training when sports success is really such a gamble? I mean, do we ever really get more than one child per school per decade into being drafted? I mean, the high school I graduated from 118 years ago, I can't think of a single person that got drafted. Now, my actual sibling got close. He got close. And if you remember the second tier football leagues that they had for a whole half minute, he was actually in that. But it's just so rare for a it's so much more likely for 10 students from a high school to become a doctor or a lawyer than it is for them to ever become an athlete. But that's where the schools put all the money? Am I the only one here that thinks that this is a problem? Okay, so number two. Well, number one, school overseas is harder. Number two, they don't take school athletics seriously over there. Okay. And even when it comes to Olympics, like kids who are gifted, that level of athletically gifted, they don't even go to regular school. They come out and they get trained specifically. They don't just throw all kids into sports. They show the ones that show the most promise, because aren't most of these high school athletic kids just kind of mediocre? Oh gosh, I'm sorry. That's what I think. So, number three, they make sure that the kids are invested in the end game of academics. What that means is the kids in these schools overseas understand that if I go to my classes and I do the work and I get good grades and I graduate, that I'm going to have a career. They understand that these shortcuts are just luck. You know, we can look at Gates, who didn't finish college, and we can look at a bunch of famous people who didn't finish high school. But they understand that that's luck and that they really need to put work in to be successful in life. And they make sure that these kids understand the importance of school from a young age. The students in other countries deeply believe that what they are doing in school will affect their lives. And once again, I'm going to link to that Upworthy article. And so here's the thing. American schools are what American schools are. We are a country of popularity. We are a country of cliques. We are a country of teams. We are a country of games. we're not necessarily a country of books. I mean, I wish, I don't know what was different for me. It might have been the wall of World Book Encyclopedia, whereas if you had a question, my mother would just point to the wall and say, look it up. I think that we have that information on the internet, but it's just not the same as opening a book and understanding that I get smarter from books. Um, in the internet now, we have all this academic information, but we also have all these distractions. If you know, in ancient Rome, um, you would go to the theater, the Colosseum, and you would stay there all day. And this was government sanctioned because the government wanted you to be distracted by things that made you happy rather than get involved in what was going on, especially if you were the common man, because only the aristocracy got educated. And this is what they did with the common man. I feel like the internet is similar because the common man is just so distracted by the ooh shiny of the internet that you're not paying attention to what's going on academically, and you're not paying attention to what's going on in our nation. But I digress. So, what I want to say is we know that our kids aren't getting what they need in school, because when you ask foreign exchange students in America what the differences between American schools and foreign schools, they have told us that the foreign schools are harder, more stringent, sports are just a hobby, and the kids understand the purpose of their education. So, that said, we know that the opposite happens here in the US. Sports are everything, cliques are everything, teams are everything. Um, we're teaching to the test and giving busy work at home to make them look like they're learning something. And kids just could give two shakes in heck about the end game, because they see too many people getting rich from dumb luck. And they think, why should I do it the hard way when the easy way is evidenced? They, all the people who are working hard, they're not getting the news media. There was a kid I followed years ago when my kids were homeschooling. There's a little black child, a little boy, and I met him at a homeschool co-op when he was about 10 or 11. Um, he was taking calculus at that age. And here's the thing, I don't think this is an enigma. I think it's possible. For the harder you push some kids, the more they're going to learn. This kid was at Morehouse College at 13, and I think he stayed there and got multiple degrees before he went out to teach like physics, you know? And I just think that we spend too much time doing fun, distracting things when we should be seeing what kids will gravitate toward and then pushing them. So, parents have to understand that school is not responsible for the student's success. They don't care. They don't care. The reason why my side gig, and this is what I tend to spend my weekends doing, counseling public and private school students on college entry and college scholarships, is because the school doesn't do it. The guidance counselors go in and they say, who's tested in the top 10%? Who are the top 10% GPA? And those are the kids they focus on. Meanwhile, the top 30 are very capable of going into college. Honestly, it's only the top 10 or 20 that don't move forward into education. But so we have this huge population of the school, like 60% of the kids who are ignored. And it is up to the parents to help them take that next step. And this is kind of why I have this channel. And this is kind of what I'm passionate about. And this is kind of what I do. So, what I need parents to understand is that school's response is not the school's responsibility for the student's success. And I've had so many families say to me, well, we didn't take the SAT because the school didn't. Or we only took the SAT once because the school didn't. Or I didn't sign up for enough classes to graduate because the school didn't. The school's not gonna. They're not going to. If you don't rank in the top 10%, nobody cares. And it's not that the kids in the top 20 and top 30 and top 40 and top 50% aren't as capable as that top 10%. It's just that they don't hire enough guidance counselors. And those guidance counselors want to give the school the best record, the best track record possible. So they focus on those kids with the most easily trackable success. Because it's all about numbers and spreadsheets, isn't it? It is. So, like, this is typically the most jarring realization that a new homeschooler usually makes. And this happened to me. There was a moment after, and I have many videos on this, where, I decided to homeschool and I took a few months self-teaching myself, getting ready for homeschooling. And then, school was over and we were having a summer and I was planning the next year, and I just had this punch in the face realization that if my kids didn't do well, it was on me. I no longer had the luxury to say, well, the school didn't. Well, the teacher didn't. No, it was, if your kids fail, it's because you didn't do everything in your power to help them do it. Because now, as a homeschooler, it's on you, girl. But guess what? All parents, homeschool, public school, private school, no school, all parents have to understand this. In the United States of America, doesn't matter what your educational philosophy is. It doesn't matter where you drop your kids off at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. You are responsible for your child's education, and you have to take the lead. What does that look like? That looks like beginning of the year. You're meeting with all the teachers. You're getting the syllabus. You have a binder at home. You're tracking the homework. You're doing pop quizzes on your kids. I don't care if your kids don't like it. But if you know your kids going into a test on Friday, why wouldn't you pop quiz them? Why wouldn't you pop quiz them? And say, oh, no, you need to study because you're about to take a test and you don't know this material, right? We have to make sure that the children not just do things that the teacher wants for that little check mark in that grade book, but we have to make sure that they're actually absorbing and learning that material. We have to make sure that in the after school hours that they are doing other academically minded activities that may or may not be offered at the school. We need to be poking and prodding our children to figure out where their talents lie. We need to be advocating for gifted classes in one or two subjects. If we're in public school, they need to be sick of us. They need to know that we're coming by the jingle of our keys when we're walking down the hall. The schools, if your kids are in school, everyone in the school needs to know you. They need to know you're not playing. Your child needs to know you're not playing. You need to make sure the kids are getting what they need during the school year and during the summers. You need to have your at-home curriculum ready to further enrich them, to make sure they go into that next school year. If they're in the 50th percentile, they're going back next school year in the 70th percentile. Because when they get to high school, if they're not in that top 10 percentile, they're not going to get the help they need to get into college. And then that's your job anyway, right? So let's shift the conversation just a little bit. No comments? I know y'all got something to say about what I'm saying. I'm in a mood. And what I'm going to read to you next is going to tell you why I'm in a mood. Because I'm just kind of totally sick and over the school systems as they stand right now. I think it's ridiculous what we as parents have to endure and what we as parents put up with. And I'm just so done. In Rigby, Utah, this week, 2 or 3 days ago, a 6th grade girl brought in a gun and shot people. This isn't about the unpredictability of school danger, which is real. It's about frustrated kids. Now, fortunately, she wasn't a good aim, or she didn't intend to kill anyone. But she shot 3 people, a custodian and 2 students, and she shot them in their limbs. So none of the wounds are deadly. And a teacher was able to just come up and like take the gun from her. Thank the Lord. We don't have a lot of information about the shooter. She's a minor. And like the authorities are trying to figure out, what were you thinking? Why did she want to shoot people? And I guess we'll hear it over time. But these kids are frustrated and these kids are angry. And they're doing really bad things. And it's not just about kids bullying each other. Maybe it is to some degree. But if they were in academically stringent and rewarding situations, there'd be a lot less time for the shady things that would make a child want to bring a gun to school. And this isn't new. This isn't a 2021 occurrence. When I was pregnant with my first child in 1994, where I lived at the time was a city called Rochester, New York. And there was a huge story about a young girl who stabbed another child and killed her over a boy. And it devastated me because I was pregnant with my first child and I sobbed for a solid week. And I knew that my kids weren't going to go to Rochester public schools. I knew that. I didn't know what I was going to do. But when I did put them in schools, they did go into private schools. But kids in private schools snap too, you know. So I speak to a lot of formerly homeschooled kids. No, I said that wrong. I speak to a lot of homeschool kids who were formerly in public school, in traditional school. That's my journey. This is called accidental homeschooling. There are people who don't think for a minute that they'll ever end up in a homeschooling situation. And lo and behold, they find themselves there for any myriad of reasons. And this is called accidental homeschooling. There's always going to be some of those kids who hate homeschooling and want to go back to public school. And that's great, because some kids actually thrive in that situation. But the vast majority feel frustrated and traumatized by school, and would never go back if they could help it. My kids in particular, when I couldn't get them to perform, all I had to say was, if you're not going to do the work for me, legally I have to send you back to public school. And they'd be like, nope, here's what you asked for. Here's that essay, here's that math test. Like, they were like, no, I'm not going back. It was traumatizing. I had bedwetting and was about to call a psychologist because my kids were that bad off. Um, One of the problems is in schools, teachers are forced to rush through curriculum, um, and then more time is spent in practicing for the test than learning and critical thinking. When children have questions, they aren't being asked. They aren't being answered, or they aren't being allowed to ask. So the kids who learn through reasoning aren't being served because they aren't getting to have that conversation that they need to have. They are not being challenged. And as I already said, there's a huge there's a huge epidemic of low expectations, especially in the African American communities. I graduated top of my class, um, and got to college and had a false start because I couldn't hang. So if I'm at the top of my class and I couldn't keep up, bruh, that's bad. I adjusted. I stepped back. I worked. I went to community college, pulled my game up, and then went back in. But that's discouraging for a lot of kids. Do you know what I mean? Um, so week to week, um, during the school year, I run a homeschool co-op program, and I work with homeschool students, about a dozen, face to face. Well, this year was Zoom to Zoom, but I work with about a dozen students, and half of them were formerly traditionally schooled, and they're new homeschoolers. Um, they don't adjust right away. They don't adjust to homeschooling right away. It's they're it's just like you spun them around for 3 hours. They are a mess for a while. Um, some are like, "Where's my work? Where's my work? Where's my work? Where's my work?" Because they're so used to churning out so much busy work that they feel like they aren't doing schooling if you aren't constantly feeding them worksheets and busy work. And so they're very confused, um, that they can just learn something and not get tested on it, or learn something and not have to do a worksheet on it. Go to a science museum and not have a worksheet. Um, have a discussion about a war and not have a worksheet. They're very confused by the lack of worksheets, right? Um, and then some are just completely burnt out and won't perform at all. They're like, "I'm not in school. I ain't doing nothing. You can't make me. I'm not gonna." Um, and that's always fun too. I tend to take advantage of the kids who are looking for work by just pushing them into new things, having them read more books, and okay, let's do this, let's do that. I refuse to give the worksheets. And then the kids that won't do the work, I have to pull. I have to pull and have discussions and things with them. It takes about a year for them to change their mindsets and motivation toward education. Remember where this conversation started with comparing foreign schools to US schools, and how item number 3 was that kids understand the end game, they understand the purpose of education. Number 2 was sports aren't the huge distraction overseas. And number 1 is school is just harder over there, so the kids have to focus. Um, but it takes about a year to get American formerly traditionally schooled kids who are now moved into homeschooling to get them to focus, which is why I warn people about trial homeschooling. Of course, this COVID year was a huge exception. Do what you can do, what you need to do, like seriously. But I warn parents against COVID homeschooling because not sorry. I warn kids against trial homeschooling. Let's try it for you, and if it doesn't work, we'll go back. because 1 year is not long enough to see the improvement you need. It takes a year and change before they start going, oh, I get this. In some ways, that some things that I have noticed gets them to shift their mindset is theater, specifically classic theater. Right now, we're working on a production of Julius Caesar, and kids who I haven't been able to get to write one essay a week have memorized 300 lines. Um, and every line is a sentence, like a whole complete sentence. Um, and I see them loosening up and going, I'm capable. Okay, I'm capable. Um, and now they want more. Um, Speech classes where you give them a topic, and they have to do the pros and cons. One child chooses pros, one child chooses cons, and it's really effective when they choose something they don't necessarily agree with, and they have to defend that idea that they don't necessarily agree with. um, being challenged to critically think, and critically think from the other perspective, helps kids see. It helps them feel smart and understand how the education is going to play off in the real world. And then other things that help children change their mindset about education is applied math and science, and not just textbook. Robotics competitions, science olympiads, um, and things like that. Um, and so, as usual, um, my whole point here is we know, and I'm going to link the article, we know full well that things are just not working in American education. We know this. Um, and we feel lost as parents, especially as parents with kids in public school. And we're having a hard time reaching our kids emotionally and academically. And so what we need to do is, I'm not going to say you need to homeschool them, because you don't. They can still be in school and they can still get that socialization that everyone thinks is so important. But you have to have a homeschool mindset. You have to get them to understand that their education is for them, something that they are doing to move their lives forward, and not something someone is doing to them. As parents, we have to understand that our children's education isn't something we do to them, but something that they do and that we facilitate. We all have to change the way that we think about school. We're just in a really dangerous place as a country and as a society, where critical thinking is suddenly bad. Like, what's up with that? Where groupthink is the way? Who comes up with this stuff? Do you know what I mean? And we need to be. It's the way our culture is happening today, where things are just getting weird and bad, and everyone's uptight and everyone's protesting against each other. And there's this cult of personality where we all do what a person says, you know. Um, that's because we're not educated properly. It's because we don't vet information. Someone says this, and we're like, okay, well, if he says it now, I don't have to think. I'm sorry, that just frustrated me really bad. That frustrated me really bad. Um, it's just super indicative of what's going on in school. Like if they're not allowed to think in school, if they're not allowed to ask questions in school, if they're not allowed to do independent projects in school, if you're not allowed to examine history with a critical eye in school, how are we going to get anything accomplished outside of school as adults? We're not going to do any critical thinking as adults. We're going to be as cliquish as middle schoolers, as grown adults, right? We're gonna fall for the okey doke, as my dad liked to say. We're just gonna fall for the okey doke. You know what I mean? And school is just gonna be a colossal. It is. School right now is a colossal waste of time, and the kids know it. The kids know. That's why they're frustrated. That's why they're turning on each other. That's why they're jumping each other. That's why they're trying to kill each other. Um, it's a whole mess. It's a whole mess. And you know, for years I've always said that the answer was to homeschool your kids. But what I've seen this year, I don't know. Because what I've seen this year are parents moving into the homeschool realm, out of the public education realm. And the large number of families that did that this year are showing me that it takes more than just homeschooling them to make that change. And the biggest problem that I'm seeing is people going, okay, I'm going to homeschool. We're going to homeschool. What curriculum do I buy? Okay, that looks easy. I don't have to think too much. Okay, do they get a free laptop? What do you mean, do they get a free laptop? Buy the laptop. I'm sorry. Ooh. Not regular homeschooling. You don't get a free laptop. That's school at home run by public schools. And then they're like, okay, so they come back a week later and they're like, okay, so I sat my kid in front of the computer for 2 weeks and I'm frustrated because they didn't do the work. And now I think I want to put them back in public school. And I'm just looking at these message boards and I'm going, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. Homeschooling isn't you pull them out, you buy the easiest curriculum that you can find to manage, and you set them in front of it. I don't care if they're in first grade, and I don't care if they're in 12th grade. That's not how homeschooling works. You have to sit with them. You have to explain the concepts. You have to find out if they have any questions. If you can't handle this curriculum, you need to hire a tutor. Okay? Because frustrated public school kids are going to quickly become frustrated homeschoolers if they don't have the support they need. I said that. I said that. Because it's not about putting curriculum in front of them and doing the work. It's not. It's about walking them through it, sitting with them, learning together, doing it as a family. You don't have time? Too bad, so sad. There are 24 hours in a day. There are 16 waking hours in a day. And if you have to work 8 to 10 hours, you got 6 to 8 hours to work with your kids. Don't care if it's the morning and night or third shift. Don't make your kids work third. Actually, high schoolers would love to work third shift, but don't do that. Don't do that. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. Don't do that. So I'm trying to. I struggled so much with getting on today and with dealing with a new computer, which I ended up not doing live streaming on because it wouldn't work, which is why I'm using a Chromebook, which is why my picture is garbage. That I didn't get to pull up just random homeschool questions that I like to answer. And y'all haven't asked me any questions. So I'm just now pulling up homeschool questions. Okay. To share. Oh my. A homeschool sports bill was signed into law today. I'm dying. I just finished talking about how schools in foreign countries don't focus on sports. And then you just heard me say how homeschool parents, especially coming over from public school, are dragging that public school mentality into homeschooling. And here we are. Governor Brian Kemp in Georgia signed the homeschool bill into law today. That doesn't seem problematic, does it? It is. It's just so. There's just a much greater chance of your child becoming a doctor or a lawyer than becoming an athlete. Athletics is talent and luck. Doctor and lawyer is hard work. I'd rather them do the hard work than rely on talent and luck. And I have a talented family. It's just how I feel about that. So, but here's where the homeschool bill is a problem. The homeschool bill is the sports bill. The sports homeschool bill is a problem because now what they've allowed, what the law they've passed, says that homeschoolers can now do athletics with public schools if they take at least one public school class. So now what they've done is now the public schools have reached back in, right, to homeschool world. And now they're pulling kids back. So they're getting that government money back because now their enrollment has gone back up. So that's what that's about. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of dissension on campus because homeschool kids who are really good are going to end up being put on teams above kids who are in the school doing all the work. And so that's going to cause personality clique and fighting issues. Right? And so there's just nothing fun about that whatsoever. A lot of homeschoolers these days, this is a good news kind of deal, are looking for non-religious based homeschool groups, which mine is. It's not that I'm not Christian, because I am. It's that I don't want to exclude anyone based on their beliefs or their lifestyle from being part of a homeschool community. Um, and a lot of the homeschool classes that are available to us kind of go a little far. Um, I'm not even going to go into that. Okay, so here's someone once again looking for the distractions of public schools in the homeschool. They loved getting their yearbooks when they were in public school, and they're wondering how they can get homeschool yearbooks. Get one of those, get a journal, and go around to all your homeschool friends and have everybody write a note for the year and tape a picture in it, because that's more of a community book. That would be fun. Oh, here's a really good question that I've been seeing this week, and it is, how do you organize your homeschooling? Um, Normally, for me, what I did was, because the majority of my kids' homeschool work was online things. They had outside classes, but for those outside classes, they usually had like a notebook with a folder section in it. So the loose sheets went into the folder, and the notebook work went into the notebook. But I literally just had a binder for every school year, a fat one, 3-inch binder for every school year. And when they finished a test or they finished a lesson or whatever it was, I would just hole punch it and put it in there, and I would have it set up just like a high school binder by subject. It's really not hard to organize homeschooling at all. I'm not I'm not in my home office right now, because I have two homes now, and this home doesn't have any of my work in it. But I'll make sure to do a video flipping through um, an organized homeschool notebook for the year, and how you keep the files and what all goes into it, and all of those neat things. I just People keep asking me about homeschooling kindergartners, and I just think that's a stupid question. You really just need to be getting them used to learning all the time. And if you've had a baby and a toddler, and you taught them the songs, and you taught them to tie their shoes or whatever you taught them today, homeschooling is just the same. It's just a checklist. By the end of a What did I just say? Homeschooling kindergarten is the same. It's just a checklist. By the end of that year, they should be able to read small books, and they should be able to count. Like, it's not that hard. It's not a big deal. I think sometimes we make. All right, now I sound crazy, because what I was about to say is, I think sometimes we make homeschooling to be a big deal when it isn't, because the day to day of homeschooling isn't a big deal. All the work for me went into the summers, when I was strategizing and thinking and looking at my kids' talent and what they had displayed in the previous year, and deciding, okay, where am I going to push them this year? What do I want to draw out of them this year? That strategizing, that was serious. But the day to day teaching them was oh so easy. Um, it was conversational. You sit on a big couch, practically on top of each other. You let them lay on you or whatever, and you just talk. The only time you're really at a table is when you're doing math. Do you know what I mean? And even then, they're at a computer and you're standing behind them or you're sitting next to them. It's so relational. And I don't want to say when done right, because there's no such thing as doing homeschooling right. Every family has their own way about them. But when you take the act of learning and you integrate it with the way your family operates, man, it's not hard at all. Clubs are a really great way to engage homeschool students and get them really to raise their game, to raise their what they're willing to do and output. We had science club this year, and it was the first time we'd done it, and we did it with the middle schoolers because we only had, I think, one high school this year. Now we're going to have split middle and high school next year. Um, and my worst students, as in my least motivated students, my students fresh out of public school who just weren't feeling any of this homeschool nonsense as far as they were concerned. It just made them sit up in their chairs and they got excited. And one girl who's not a great student at the end of our first day of Science Bowl said that that had been her best day of homeschooling ever. She liked that pressure. She liked being put under that pressure to think quick and to force answers out of her head. And she loved the fact that we advanced to the next round. Like these clubs where they do academic things together, they do the robotics together, they they do fencing. That's a physical athletic deal. I'm not against sports. I understand where teamwork comes in. It just can't be the end all be all because at that point it becomes a distraction from the academics. You have to find the balance in it. Right now, like I said, we're working on Julius Caesar. We're working on a play, and I have that book here, guys. It is crazy. When I say 300 lines, like there's just so much. I'm looking for a monologue. The play is not this thick, it's about half this thick. This particular book gives you um, the text on one side and explanation on the other side so they understand what they're saying. But just having kids do theater, especially classical theater, and not just like the little easy theater, that sounds ridiculous. Musical theater has its place, but theater that helps them learn, because we did ancient history this year, and ancient history ends with the fall of Rome. And we're talking about Julius Caesar right now. To do a whole play about Julius Caesar reinforces everything they learned. And then to speak the words and to memorize all this, kids that were scared and shy are now participating at a higher level. It's just so exciting. So so let's see. I've laid out a lot of problems, right? I've complained a lot this hour, right? Um, and so now I just don't want to leave you on a down note. I want you to think about how we can counter the fact that American education sucks. Um, what we can do that's positive to help our children excel, whether we are public school, whether we are private school, or whether we are homeschool. Um, make them see how education pays off. Those clubs I just mentioned helps them see how education plays off. They Julius Caesar, even just doing theater. Here's a book. We're gonna do this in front of people on stage. So now they have the book. They're gonna memorize their parts in the book because the end goal is to get on stage and perform and show how much you've learned. You know what I'm saying? Science Bowl, Science Olympiad, each student gets a different discipline of science. One does biology, one does chemistry, one does physical science, one does earth and space, right? So you give each of them, their checklist. You give them, I like to give them a video playlist to watch. I like to give them vocabulary, those little vocabulary apps, to go through. And then they start practicing together and supporting each other. And, if someone's answer seems a little off base, they're like, is that correct? But they have to do it quickly and think fast and then answer the question before the other team can answer it. Now they're like, okay, I learned, and now I get to demonstrate what I've learned. Um, Speech and debate. They're given something to research. They don't just research it and then privately show it to a teacher who says it's right or wrong. They're doing it in a forum. They're researching. They might be advocating for an opinion that's not even theirs, but they have to research it and communicate it convincingly to win. There's an end game there. So, what we can do to help children love and appreciate learning more is to give them a process, to make it more project oriented. Because, hey, what happens when you grow up and you work, you go into the workforce? Work is typically project oriented. You're delivering to a customer, whether it be a customer in a store or a Fortune 500 company that you're creating a website for, right? You're given parameters, you're given time, you're given a goal, and you have to work toward it. I think if we made education here more project oriented, um, we would get along. We would go a long way into giving the children a bigger heart for education. Um, Even if your kid is in public school, just because they need to be there, um, you can spend your summers. You can assign them a project for the summer that they have to work through and have an end goal. You can find a group of people like minded who are willing to work toward that end goal and give your kid a really good summer experience. It can happen in homeschooling and it can happen in public schooling. It can happen after school. Your public school students can join robotics after school. Now, my brother was a robotics instructor at school as a volunteer, and I'll tell you why he quit, because they wouldn't let his son in the robotics class because his son's GPA wasn't high enough. And it wasn't that he had a trash GPA, it's that he had a below a 3.0. So once again, you're only enriching the top of the class. You're not giving these middling kids um, what they need emotionally to want to do more, right? So parents, I don't care how you're schooling. Um, Look at your kids' motivation level and find ways to get them to understand why education is important and not just speaking to them. Put them in project oriented groups, clubs, things where they can use their smarts and zero in and complete a project, right? Okay. Stop putting all your resources into their athletics. At least put as much resources into their math and science and reading as you do their athletics, because the numbers are clear. Your child has a better chance of becoming a doctor or a lawyer than an athlete. So let's stop making athletics. What do you call that? Let's stop making athletics like the number one plan, and then academics the fallback. Shouldn't athletics be the fallback? I mean, like, what are the chances? Anyway, I'm done. I'm done, y'all. Um, like I said, if you enjoy my video, I work with kids to make sure they get into college with scholarships. I help homeschoolers put together their program, especially new homeschoolers. I'll walk you through your fears, all those things. If you need me, leave a comment in the comment section. I read all my comments at this point. I was monetized yesterday. I'm not at a point in my life where I am too busy for you. Okay, this is what I do. This is what I love to do. I run a non-for-profit focused on making sure homeschoolers and all students have what they need to get into college with scholarships. I'm just, kind of just really over the fact that U.S. schools are doing so poorly. U.S. education as a whole is doing so poorly. The link to the articles will be attached. Have a great week. Ask questions. Your questions help me to come up with new topics for videos. And also, I like knowing that I've given people resources that they need. So that is all. Until next time.